We've got some great used cars in the back, more realistic for you. Start with a credit application.
New Charger, fully loaded, no financing. I'm paying in full today.
Those are expensive. We deal with real banks, real customers. We can't take random pieces of paper and call it money.
Won't be needing that. What's in this folder more than covers it.
Let's skip the stories. You're not the first to pretend you have money.
Get your manager, right now. You're about to throw away the biggest sale you'll see this month. You just lost your commission. Judge less, verify more.
I misjudged you.
Imagine walking into a car dealership with enough money to buy your dream car in cash. And the salesman takes one look at your skin color and decides you're broke, dishonest, and not worth his time. Now imagine the look on his face when you lay down a stack of official military checks and pay in full, right in front of everybody. Marcus had been thinking about this day for years, not weeks. Not months, years. Back in basic training, when he was still getting yelled at for every tiny mistake, he'd cut a picture of that exact car out of a magazine and taped it inside his locker. While other guys hung up posters of models and video game characters, Marcus had a single photo, a jet black muscle car, low to the ground, headlights like focused eyes. He was a Black Army staff sergeant now, just back from deployment, but that picture had stayed in his mind the whole time. He remembered those nights, overseas, sand everywhere, dust in his lungs, the smell of fuel and sweat and metal. After long missions, when the tent got quiet and the only sound was distant generators, Marcus would pull out his pay stub, stare at the numbers, and do the math in his head. How many more checks until I can walk into a dealership and pay in full? How many more months until I never have to hear the word denied again? While other soldiers blew their pay on quick thrills, new shoes, expensive nights out on leave, gadgets they didn't need, Marcus did something different. He opened a separate account. Every month, those military checks went straight in there, untouched. No late-night impulse buys. No, I'll just take a little bit out this time, he'd tell himself. Future me is going to thank present me. Stay focused. There was a reason for that discipline. Growing up, Marcus watched his mom struggle with interest rates and payments she could barely afford. He sat in the passenger seat of old cars that made more noise than speed. Hearing grown men talk to her like she was dumb, like she should be grateful for whatever they allowed her to have. He watched her sign papers she didn't really understand, because the dealer rushed her, talked over her, and made her feel small. He'd promised himself 2 things. 1, he'd never let anyone talk to him like that. 2, one day he'd buy a car so clean, so powerful, that nobody could doubt he earned it. That car became his private motivation when things got hard. When he was thousands of miles from home, sweating through his uniform, exhausted from patrol, he'd picture himself back in the States. He'd imagine opening a glass dealership door, walking past the salesmen who were used to people begging for better rates, and saying 4 simple words, I'm paying in full. No loans, no begging for approvals, no praying his credit score would impress a stranger behind a desk. Just his name on the title. Paid in full, no apologies attached. On his first free Saturday back home, he finally decided it was time. He slid behind the wheel of his old, beat-up sedan, faded paint, cracked dashboard, a weird rattle that never quite went away, and drove to the nicer side of town. The side with new sidewalks. The side with manicured lawns. The side with that dealership he'd seen 100 times but never dared to walk into. Today, that changed. He pulled up across the street and just sat there for a moment, engine idling, heart beating a little harder than he liked to admit. Across the road, the dealership looked like something out of a commercial. Glass walls, bright white lights, flags fluttering, rows of shiny cars lined up like a fleet of trophies. Every hood sparkled under the sun, every chrome detail screaming one word, success. Marcus exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about a car. It was about every assumption people had made about him. The teachers who said kids from his neighborhood didn't go far. The store clerks who watched him a little too closely. The times strangers clutched their bags a little tighter when he walked by. He was tired of being silently underestimated. He shut off the engine, grabbed the plain black folder from the passenger seat, and stepped out. No jewelry, no designer clothes, just a simple t-shirt, clean jeans, and the kind of confidence that doesn't need to be loud. He pressed the lock button on his old sedan and listened to the weak little beep. For a second, he looked at it and smiled. This is the last time you're my only option, he thought. You got me this far. Now it's time to upgrade. Then he turned toward the dealership. Each step across that parking lot felt heavier than it should have. Not from fear, but from everything that moment represented. Years of saving. Years of sacrifice. Years of late-night thoughts in faraway places, dreaming about this exact walk. He adjusted his t-shirt, squared his shoulders, and tightened his grip on the folder. Inside, it was his entire story in paper form. His ID, his deployment papers, and those hard-earned military checks. The physical proof of every sunrise he'd seen in uniform, every mission he'd completed, every holiday he'd missed. He walked toward the glass doors, watching the reflection of a man who had done everything right, who had played by the rules and worked harder than anyone ever saw. He had no idea that before he drove off that lot, he wouldn't just be buying a car, he'd be exposing a salesman's ugly prejudice, right in front of the entire showroom, and turning this quiet victory into a lesson nobody there would ever forget. The doors whooshed open, and cold air rushed out to meet him. The sudden blast of air conditioning smelled like new leather, car wax, and coffee. The floor gleamed. Bright showroom lights bounced off polished hoods, and big, glossy posters of smiling families standing next to cars with giant red bows. For a second, Marcus just stood there, taking it in. This was the kind of place that was built to impress you before anyone even spoke a word. Behind a glossy reception desk sat a middle-aged salesman in a sharp navy suit, perfectly knotted tie, hair slicked back like he checked every strand before coming to work. He tapped away on his tablet until the motion at the door made him look up. His eyes landed on Marcus. They moved quickly, from Marcus's face to his simple t-shirt and jeans, down to his worn sneakers, then to the plain black folder in his hand. The salesman's lips curved upward, but the so-called smile stopped short of his eyes. It was professional, polite, and cold. "Can I help you?" the man asked, dragging out the words like he already expected the answer to be no. Marcus caught the tone. Not welcome in. Not, what can we get you into today? Just cautious, barely interested. Yeah, Marcus said, polite but confident. I'm looking for a brand new Charger. Fully loaded. No financing. The salesman's fingers paused over the tablet. His name tag flashed in the light. Parker, senior sales consultant. Parker's eyebrows climbed slowly. No financing? He repeated, like it was a joke he didn't quite get. Those are expensive. He leaned back in his chair, giving Marcus another quick once-over. We have some great used cars in the back that might be more... He paused, searching for the right word. Realistic. The word landed like a slap. Realistic. Marcus felt the sting. He let his gaze drift across the showroom. The new SUVs up front. The sports cars elevated on small platforms. The banners advertising no money down and instant approvals. There was no sign that said, expensive cars only available to people in suits. But the message was clear in Parker's tone. He looked back at the salesman, his jaw tightening just a bit. I know exactly what I want, Marcus replied calmly. New Charger, today. Something in the way he said today made a few other salespeople glance over. They looked at Marcus, then at Parker, then went back to pretending to type. Parker took a slow breath through his nose, then exhaled, forcibly smoothing his expression back into that fake, controlled smile. Sure, he said, we can... Take a look. He stood up, grabbing a tablet from the desk. Up close, Marcus could see the small details. The way Parker kept one hand tucked in his pocket. The way he angled his body slightly to the side instead of facing him straight on, like he was already bracing for trouble. But, Parker added, voice taking on that patronizing, explaining to a child rhythm, just so you know, we have strict credit requirements here. We don't want to waste your time. Why don't you fill out a credit application first? He gestured toward a small seating area with clipboards and pens, like he was gently directing Marcus away from the shiny cars and back into the lane he assumed he belonged in. Marcus didn't move. Instead, he lifted the folder a little higher, his fingers resting on the edge. "Won't be needing that," he said. The words were simple, but the certainty behind them was unmistakable. Parker's eyes flicked to the folder, lingering for half a second on the neatly closed flap, then slid back up to Marcus's face. Whatever was hiding behind that professional mask flickered through for a moment. His smile thinned. "Everyone needs to fill one out," Parker replied, his tone tightening. "Those cars aren't exactly affordable for most people. The bank has to be sure." Marcus cut in, still calm, still controlled. "I said I won't be needing that. I'm not here for a loan. I'm here to buy." The way the word buy dropped between them made the background noise of the showroom seem to dim for a second. In the corner, a kid laughed too loudly. A printer started whirring. Someone's phone rang. But right at that desk, there was a quiet standoff. Parker's jaw flexed. He glanced around as if hoping another salesman would swoop in and take over. No one did. This was his customer, his commission if he played it right. But he hadn't decided yet whether Marcus was worth the effort. Marcus held his gaze. "What's in here will more than cover the cost," he said evenly. "You can either show me the Charger, or I can find a dealership that will." For a heartbeat, the two men just stared at each other. In that moment, it was obvious what Parker saw when he looked at Marcus. Not a disciplined Army staff sergeant, not a man who'd just come back from serving his country, not a determined buyer who had saved for years to walk through those doors. He didn't see a serious buyer, he saw a problem, and he was about to make that very clear. They walked out to the lot together, the heavy glass door closing behind them with a soft thud. The sun was bright, bouncing off windshields and chrome, turning the rows of cars into a sea of reflections. For a second, the lot looked almost unreal, like something out of one of those commercials Marcus had watched on a tiny TV overseas. "Over here is our mid-size section," Parker said mechanically, already veering toward a line of modest sedans. Good gas mileage, affordable payments. But Marcus wasn't following. His eyes had locked onto something else. There it was, jet black. Aggressive stance. Hood gleaming like obsidian under the sun. The car sat slightly apart from the others, like it knew it wasn't average. Wide tires, dark rims, headlights that looked like narrowed eyes. Marcus's heart kicked up just a bit every late night in the barracks. Every long patrol, every dusty sunrise he'd stood through wishing he was home. This was the car he'd pictured at the end of it all. He walked straight toward it without waiting for Parker to lead. "This one," Marcus said, stopping at the driver's side and taking in every detail. "Fully loaded." "I'll take it," Parker caught up, following his gaze, then did a double-take. "That one?" he repeated, his jaw tightening. He let out a short, disbelieving laugh under his breath. "You would want to buy this today." There it was again, that word, today. Like Marcus had just pointed at a private jet instead of a car. Marcus rested his hand lightly on the side mirror, almost like a promise. "Yes," he said. "Today." For a split second, something flashed in Parker's eyes, annoyance, disbelief, and something uglier sitting just underneath. But he pasted on another thin smile. "Well," he said, "let's at least go run some numbers." Back inside, the cooler air felt sharper now. They settled at a small desk near the corner of the showroom. The desk was cluttered with brochures, a calculator, and a coffee mug that said "Top Closer," even though the coffee inside had gone cold. Marcus calmly set his black folder on the table, his movements precise, deliberate. No fumbling, no hesitation. He opened it and laid everything out, one item at a time, his military ID, his deployment orders. A neat stack of official military checks and bank documents, all arranged in order. "I'm paying in full," Marcus said, his voice steady. "Here's proof of funds." For a moment, Parker just stared. His eyes jumped from the ID to the checks, then to the bank statements with their unmistakable numbers. There was enough money there to end the conversation, to end any doubt. Instead, the corner of Parker's mouth curled into a smirk. "Look," he said, and this time he deliberately raised his voice a little, making sure people at a nearby desk could hear. "We can't just take any random pieces of paper and call it money. He gave a small, fake chuckle, shaking his head. We deal with real banks, real customers. The last two words hung in the air like an accusation. Marcus felt the shift instantly. A man flipping through a brochure at the next desk slowed his movements. A woman who'd been scrolling on her phone glanced up. The faint buzz of the showroom suddenly felt distant. These are legitimate military checks, Marcus said, keeping his voice controlled. I've just come back from deployment. This is my pay, my savings. You can verify everything. He tapped the documents lightly, not in anger, but in quiet certainty. Parker didn't even look closely. Instead, he reached out and pushed the papers back with one finger, like he was sliding away a mess someone had left on his table. His expression slid from fake friendly to openly condescending. Or, he said, voice dripping with that slow, fake patience people use when they think they're smarter than you. We can skip the stories and save ourselves some time. Stories, the word cut deeper than the tone. I've been in this business a long time, Parker went on, shrugging like he was just sharing friendly advice. I know when someone's just browsing. No need to go through all this performance. Performance. To him, Marcus's years of service, months in the desert, nights on patrol, and all those carefully saved checks weren't real. They were an act, a lie. A game. Marcus could feel his pulse in his throat, but he kept his face calm, his voice measured. Around them, the room had definitely gone quieter. An older couple had stopped walking entirely, standing a few feet away, pretending to study a colorful brochure. Another salesman looked over, then quickly looked away. Marcus leaned forward slightly, not threatening, just, firmer, I suggest, he said, each word chosen carefully. You get your manager, right now. Parker crossed his arms over his chest, posture stiffening. He wasn't used to being challenged. Especially not like this, by someone he had already decided wasn't worth his respect. Sir, he said, his tone tightening, you're not the first person to come in here and pretend to have money. We don't need to bother the manager every time someone wants to play that game. A muscle jumped in Marcus's jaw, but he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he reached down, picked up one of the military checks, and slid it closer to Parker with a quiet scrape across the desk. You're going to want to see what you're about to throw away, Marcus said. Something in the way he said it, not loud, not aggressive, just deadly sure, made a couple of heads turn fully in their direction, and that was the moment everything started to change. The tension at the desk was impossible to miss. Voices in the showroom had dipped, that strange hush that happens when people pretend they're not listening, but absolutely are. A printer hummed somewhere in the back. A phone rang twice, then stopped. And over it all, the stiffness between Marcus and Parker hung in the air like static. It drew the attention of the floor manager, a sharp-eyed woman in a tailored blazer, name tag reading, Carla, sales manager. She'd been watching the room the way good managers do, scanning for problems before they exploded. She saw Parker's crossed arms, she saw Marcus's steady expression. She saw the way the older couple nearby had stopped pretending to browse. Carla walked over, heels quiet on the showroom floor, instincts telling her something was off. Everything okay here? She asked, voice even but firm. Parker spun slightly in his chair, too fast, too eager. Yeah, he said quickly. Everything's fine. He forced a smile that didn't match his eyes. Just explaining to this gentleman that his papers aren't the kind of payments we accept. He said papers like it was trash, like it was a joke. Carla's gaze dropped to the table. She froze. On the desk lay a spread of documents that told a very different story. Official military checks with federal markings, bank statements with serious balances, and a military ID with Marcus's photo and rank. Her expression shifted in an instant. No fake smile, no sales act. Just sharp focus. She picked up one of the checks, examining it closely, her face turning from neutral to deadly serious. You didn't even run these? She asked Parker, not looking away from the document in her hand. Parker let out a short, defensive scoff. He said he wanted to buy that charger in cash, he replied. With this, it was just, stop talking, she cut in, her voice suddenly cold and clipped. The words landed hard. A few nearby heads turned fully now, no longer pretending not to watch. Carla finally looked at Marcus. Sir, she said, and this time her tone was completely different, respectful, controlled, sincere. "First of all, thank you for your service." Marcus gave a small nod. "Second," she continued, glancing briefly and pointedly at Parker, "I'm very sorry for how you've been treated so far." She gathered the checks and statements carefully, stacking them with professional precision. "If you'll give me 5 minutes, I'll have all of this verified and we can move forward the right way." Marcus leaned back slightly in his chair, muscles still tight but eyes calmer. "That's all I asked for," he said quietly. Carla walked away briskly toward a glass-walled office at the back, papers in hand. As soon as she was gone, the silence around the desk turned into a low murmur. The older couple exchanged looks. Another salesman shot Parker a sharp side-eye, then suddenly found something incredibly interesting on his computer screen. Parker, stripped of his fake confidence, shifted uncomfortably. He uncrossed his arms, recrossed them, cleared his throat. He didn't apologize, he didn't say a word. Minutes ticked by. For Marcus, it felt like waiting for a verdict. Only this time, he already knew the truth. He'd done the work. He had the money. The only thing on trial here was someone else's attitude. In less than 5 minutes, Carla reappeared. She wasn't holding the papers loosely anymore. She held them with the careful respect you give something important. Her walk was purposeful. Her expression was set. She stopped at the desk and placed the documents down in front of Marcus. "Not Parker. Mr. Marcus," she said, using his name now, as if to underline that she saw him clearly. "Everything checks out. Not only are these legitimate," she looked directly at Parker for this part, "but your funds are more than sufficient." She straightened up. "You're approved to pay in full today," she said clearly. "No financing necessary. The charger is yours if you still want it." It felt like the entire showroom inhaled at once. Conversations paused. A pen stopped mid-scribble. Even the faint music playing over the speakers seemed quieter. Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned his head slowly and looked at Parker. The color had drained from Parker's face. His mouth was slightly open, as if he couldn't quite process that the stories he dismissed were actually backed by more money than most customers ever walked in with. "Good," Marcus said at last, voice calm and steady. "But I have one condition." Carla's eyebrows lifted a little. "What's that?" she asked. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I don't want him earning a single dollar off this sale," he said, nodding at Parker. "Not one. He decided who I was the moment he looked at me. Let him learn from it!" The sentence landed like a hammer wrapped in silk, quiet, but impossible to ignore. For a second, nobody spoke. Parker's jaw tightened. His eyes flashed with a mix of anger and embarrassment, but he didn't dare argue. Not now. Not with half the showroom watching and his manager standing right there. Then Carla nodded, slowly but firmly. "Done," she said. "I'll take over the paperwork myself." She shifted her body ever so slightly, cutting Parker out of the circle without another word. In the world of sales, that was louder than any shouting. The look on Parker's face said everything. The biggest sale of the month. Maybe the year, gone, because of his own prejudice, his own assumptions, his own refusal to see the man in front of him. And everyone watching had just seen exactly how much that had cost him. As Carla printed the final documents, the steady whir of the printer seemed louder than usual. People around the showroom pretended to be busy, flipping through brochures, tapping on keyboards, scrolling on their phones, but every eye kept drifting back to that small cluster of desks where Marcus sat. They'd all heard enough pieces of the exchange to know something serious had just happened. Parker hovered near another workstation, pretending to straighten a stack of papers that didn't need straightening. His shoulders were tight, his jaw clenched. Every so often, he'd glance over at Marcus and then quickly look away. As if the sight burned, Carla moved with calm efficiency. She checked the numbers, reviewed the forms, then turned each page toward Marcus, explaining clearly, "No rush, no pressure. This is your purchase agreement. No financing as requested. This is your title. Information. This confirms your payment in full." Every time she said payment in full, it felt like a small spotlight landing on the truth. Parker had tried to ignore. The older couple, who'd been watching from a distance finally, stepped forward as Carla went to. Grabbed the final set of keys from the back office. The woman, grey hair neatly pinned back, offered a gentle smile. There was a quiet strength in her eyes, the kind that comes from a lifetime of seeing too much and staying silent too often. "Thank you for your service, young man," she said softly. "You shouldn't have been treated like that." Her husband nodded, pressing his lips together like he was swallowing his anger. "He was out of line," the older man added. "You handled it better than a lot of us would have." Marcus smiled, not bitter, just tired and grateful at the same time. "Thank you," he said. "I'm used to fighting battles in other countries. Didn't expect one just to buy a car at home." The woman shook her head slowly. "You deserved better from the start," she said. "I hope you enjoy that car every single day." "I will," Marcus replied. "Trust me," Carla returned, a small metal key fob and a second spare key resting in her palm. She set them down in front of Marcus, with a kind of ceremony, as if she understood this wasn't just a transaction to him. When the keys finally landed in his hand, they felt like more than just keys. They felt like proof that waking up early, staying disciplined, saving carefully, and staying calm in the face of disrespect meant something. Proof that quiet strength beats loud ignorance every single time. He signed the last line. Carla stamped the final page. It was done. "Congratulations, Mr. Marcus," she said, extending her hand. "And again, I'm sorry about earlier. That is not how we do business here. At least not how we should." Marcus shook her hand firmly. "You made it right," he said. "That's what matters." Carla walked him out to the lot herself. The automatic doors opened, and the sunlight hit them full on. The Charger sat there, waiting, black paint glowing in the afternoon light, like it had been parked there just for this moment. Inside the showroom, Parker stood behind the glass, arms crossed, watching. From his angle, he could see everything. Carla smiling. Marcus walking around the car one slow, satisfied time, running his hand along the hood like he was greeting an old friend. Carla handed him the key fob. "Remote starts right here," she pointed out, going over a few features. But Marcus barely heard her. His focus was on the sound he'd been waiting to hear for years. He pressed the start button. The engine roared to life, deep and powerful, cutting through the hum of traffic and the muted noise from inside the showroom. Heads turned, not just because of the sound, but because of who was behind the wheel. Parker shifted his weight. Expression twisted, not just with frustration over losing the sale, but with the uncomfortable realization that his assumptions had been dead wrong. Marcus settled into the driver's seat, the new car smell wrapping around him like a reward. The leather, the controls, the low rumble under his feet. It all felt surreal and at the same time exactly right. Carla stepped back from the car and gave him a small, respectful nod. "Drive safe, Sergeant," she said, "and enjoy it. You earned every bit of this." Before Marcus pulled away, he took a breath, then rolled down the window and looked back toward the glass showroom. He saw the older couple standing just inside, watching with proud smiles. He saw a few salespeople staring, quietly taking notes in their own minds. And he saw Parker, half hidden behind a pillar, trying to act like he wasn't watching, even though his eyes were locked on the Charger. Marcus didn't shout. He didn't rev the engine out of spite. He didn't gloat. He just spoke. Voice calm but strong, loud enough to carry through the open doors and hit every corner of that polished showroom. "Never judge someone by what you think you see," he said. "You have no idea what they've survived or what they can afford." The words hung in the air long after he finished. Then he eased out of the lot, the sun hitting the hood of his new Charger, turning his hard-earned military checks into something visible, undeniable. A symbol of work, sacrifice, and earned respect. As the taillights disappeared down the street, the silence inside the dealership was heavy. Everyone left behind had a choice to make in that moment. Stay like Parker. A change. If you were standing in that showroom, watching this happen in front of you, what would you have done? And tell me in the comments, would you have spoken up, walked out, or handled it differently? If this story made you feel something, anger, pride, or even a little bit of satisfaction when Marcus drove off, don't let it end here. Tap that like button, so more people hear stories like this. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder. Respect doesn't come from a suit, a title, or a showroom. It comes from how you treat people. And if you want more powerful, real lifestyle stories of quiet revenge and unexpected justice, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. Now, seriously, what would you have done in Marcus's place?